Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva, Jaya Guru Deva. Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitya Gaura Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagar Jatam Sagagana Raghunathanvitam Tamsa Jivam Sadvaidam Savadutam Parajana Sagitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyev cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our weekly study of Bhagavad-gita. So we are systematically studying Bhagavad-gita, and we are continuing to read from the second chapter entitled Sankhya Yoga, or Prabhupada translates as Contents of Gita Summarized. So this second chapter contains 6 sections. So the first section is Arjuna's further doubts and then his surrender to Krishna. And then section 2 is Atma Jnana. Krishna is giving knowledge of the soul. That is verse 2.11 to 2.30. That's what we completed last week. Now today we are going to continue reading from section 3. That is verse 2.31 to 38. Now Krishna is going to give knowledge of the Karma Kanda. And then he is going to inspire Arjuna to fight. So what is Karma Kanda? Karma Kanda, so if you have remember the yoga ladder I described in the practical application, or not in the practical, in the yoga system, in the introductions, when we saw that yoga systems, right? There is a hierarchy, the yoga ladder. So in that yoga ladder, right? So we saw that there is animal life, that is unregulated life, and above that is regulated life. In regulated life, a person who is not interested so much in spirituality, but he is interested only in enjoyment. But he want to do the enjoyment in a regulated way or a bona fide way. He doesn't want to do it in an adharmic way. So for those people, there is prescription available in Vedas called Karma Kanda. When you do this type of action, there will be this type of reaction. When you do this type of yajna, there will be this type of benefit. Like that, there is prescription for all different types of enjoyment. This person is not interested so much in getting liberated and going back to spiritual world. But at the same time, he doesn't want to live like an animal where there is unregulated. Adharmically, he doesn't want to enjoy. He wants to do the enjoyment in this world in a dharmic way. Because he doesn't have enough knowledge about the soul. He doesn't have proper understanding that no matter what I do in this world, everything eventually results in misery because I have to go through birth, death, old age and disease. But he has some kind of, responsibility or a fear that I want to do in a authorized way or a bona fide way. I want to enjoy, at the same time, I don't want to suffer for the enjoyment I am doing if I am doing that enjoyment in a adharmic way. So you want to do it in a dharmic way. For those people, the prescription given in Vedas is karma kanda. Actually, pretty much if you take more than 90% of the Vedas, teaches this karma kanda only. Because predominantly people in this world, their mindset is to enjoy. Because why their mindset is like that? Because that's why they had come into this world. They rebelled against their, position. Their original constitutional position is to be part and parcel of the Supreme and to serve him. But we wanted to, take up the position of the Supreme. We want to compete with him. So hence, we exercised our free will of not loving God, and that's why we came into this material world. Pretty much, not pretty much, 100%, everybody in this material world, that's why they are here. Why we come into this world? Because we want to enjoy independent of God. So, in fact, we want to take the position of God. We want to become the controller. So that is why we came into this material world. So that is predominantly everybody in this world. So predominantly everybody's mindset is like that. If you tell them to surrender to God so that, you can get liberated and go back to spiritual world, not many people may not like it immediately, that idea. Hence, predominantly Vedas gives the prescription of karma kanda. You do this, you will get this type of enjoyment. If you do this, you will get this type of benefit. Like that, for all different types of desires, there is a bona fide prescription in the Vedas. So that is called karma kanda. Above karma kanda is karma yoga, right? Because a person who is going through various cycles of birth and death, even though he is trying to enjoy dharmically, but invariably everything results in misery. Invariably everything results in death, birth, death, old age and disease, right? There is no exception. A person at some point of time, if he comes in contact with a bona fide spiritual master, he can get enlightened to realize that this material world is temporary. Nothing in this world is permanent. Everything ultimately results in, birth, death, old age and disease. That's what Krishna tells. Janma, mrityu, jara, vyadi, dukkha, doshana, darshanam. A person who realizes that the cause of all suffering in this world is this four, right? Janma, birth, mrityu, death, jara, old age, vyadi, disease. Dukkha, dosha, anudarshanam. These are the cause of suffering. Anudarshanam means situated in knowledge. A person who understands that these are the cause of suffering in this world, he is actually situated in knowledge, right? A person, he realizes that right, futility of this enjoyment in this world, then he wants to surrender to God. He wants to follow the laws of God. Hence, he will do his duty as an obedience to God. That is karma yoga. Yoga, the principle yoga means he understands that he is part and parcel of the Supreme. He wants to link his consciousness with God's consciousness. That's the process, right? Yoga is the process which links our consciousness with God consciousness. A person who engages in karma yoga, right? He realizes that everything ultimately results in misery. I have to engage everything in service of God, right? So that is actually karma yoga. So here, Krishna is giving knowledge of the soul, right? In that also he said, if you don't believe in the existence of the soul, there is nothing to lose, because if everything is matter, why do you want to worry about death of matter? And then now in this section, Krishna is going to talk about karma kanda. If you are not interested in yoga, right, at least if you want to enjoy dharmically, you want to follow the karma kanda process. What is karma kanda process? It's varnashrama system, right? For every person, right, depending on their varna and ashrama they are situated in, there is a prescribed duty. For Arjuna, as a Kshatriya, his prescribed duty is to stand up and fight against adharma. To protect dharma, he has to stand up and fight. That is the duty of a Kshatriya. For Kshatriyas, when an opportunity to fight against adharma or opportunity to fight to defend dharma comes, they become joyful, because in that, right, if they gain victory, right, they can enjoy in this world. If they die in the battlefield, they go back to higher planets to enjoy. So that's why Krishna says, he's going to tell actually Arjuna about this karma kanda. If you're not interested in jnana part, I'm telling, at least if you are interested in karma kanda, you follow your duty as a Kshatriya. That will elevate you, So that is this section. By performing prescribed duties, one gains material enjoyment, right? Material gains, right? What they get? So either in this world they get a kingdom when they fight against, or if they die, they will go to heavenly planets to enjoy, right? If he doesn't fight of his prescribed duty as a Kshatriya, then he loses materially, right? He gets infamy in this life, in this world, and then he incurs sin for not doing his duty. Further, he has to suffer in future life as well, right? So that is what this section is. So we will read from now Bhagavad-gita as it is. So verse 31 we are starting. I will just read the translation of verse 30 for the continuity purpose. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. Basically, this is what the conclusion of the previous section. Now, text 31. Swadharmam api chavakshe na vikam pitum arhasi dharmyadi yuddachrayonyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. Swadharmam, one's own religious principles, api also, cha indeed, aveksha considering, na never, vikam pitum to hesitate, arhasi you deserve, dharmyat for religious principles, he indeed, yuddhat than fighting, shrayaha better engagement, anyat any other, kshatriyasya of the kshatriya, na does not, vidyate exist. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles. And so, there is no need for hesitation. Purport. Out of the 4 orders of social administration, the second order for the matter of good administration is called Kshatriya. Kshat means hurt. One who gives protection from harm is called Kshatriya. Trayate means to give protection. The Kshatriyas are trained for killing in the forest. A Kshatriya would go into the forest and challenge a tiger face to face and fight with the tiger with his sword. When the tiger was killed, it would be offered the royal order of cremation. This system has been followed even up to the present day by the Kshatriya kings of Jaipur state. The Kshatriyas are specifically trained for challenging and killing because religious violence is sometimes a necessary factor. Therefore, Kshatriyas are never meant to accepting directly the order of sannyasa or renunciation. Non-violence in politics may be diplomacy, but it is never a factor or principle. In the religious law books, it is stated, Ahaveshu mithyo jnanam jigamshanto magishitaha yuddhamana param shaktya swargam yanti aparan mukaha yagyeshu pashavo brahman hanyante shatatam divjahai samskritya kila mantraischa tepi swargam avapnuvan. In the battlefield, a king or Kshatriya, while fighting another king envious of him, is eligible for achieving the heavenly planets after death. As the Brahmanas also attain the heavenly planets by sacrificing animals in the sacrificial fire. Therefore, killing on the battlefield on religious principles and killing animals in the sacrificial fire are not at all considered to be acts of violence, because everyone is benefited by the religious principles involved. The animal sacrificed gets a human life immediately without undergoing the gradual evolution process from one form to another. And the Kshatriyas killed on the battlefield also attain the heavenly planets, as do the Brahmanas who attain them by offering sacrifice. There are two kinds of swadharmas, specific duties. As long as one is not liberated, one has to perform the duties of his particular body in accordance with religious principles in order to achieve liberation. When one is liberated, one's swadharma, specific duty, becomes spiritual and is not in the bodily concept. It's not in the material bodily concept. In the bodily conception of life, there are specific duties for the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas respectively, and such duties are unavoidable. Swadharma is ordained by the Lord, and this will be clarified in the 4th chapter. On the bodily plane, Swadharma is called Varnashrama Dharma, or man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. Human civilization begins from the stage of Varnashrama Dharma, or specific duties in terms of specific modes of nature of the body obtained. Discharging one's specific duty in any field of action in accordance with the orders of higher authorities serves to elevate one to a higher status of life. So here, in this verse, Krishna is telling that as a Kshatriya, the highest engagement, the best engagement for him is to fight for the religious principle. He should not be hesitant of that, right? In the purport, actually, Prabhupada says that there are 4 Varnas and Ashramas. The 4 Varnas are Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. And then the 4 Ashramas are Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha and Sannyasa, right? Depending on one's Varna and Ashrama, different types of prescribed duties have been given, right? Prabhupada explains all those things nicely. How for a Kshatriya, right, it is authorized to kill for the protection of Dharma, right? Non-violence, right, in politics may be a diplomacy, right, but it is never a principle or a factor. Non-violence can be used for the purpose of diplomacy, but one cannot actually take non-violence as a principle, because if you take non-violence as a principle, you cannot maintain law and order, right? You cannot protect dharma, right? Like, right, a doctor, right? He might be compassionate, he might be, non-violent, but when it comes to discharging his duty, right, he cannot say that, oh, I will not cut that person, I will not do the surgery, right? So when it comes to discharging his duty, it cannot be a principle, right? So the principle is that it has to be used. Wherever it's necessary, violence is a utility. Wherein it has to be used, it has to be used. Everything has its place. Everything has its purpose. You cannot artificially, the doctor, surgeon cannot artificially claim that I will not cause harm. I will not, cut this person. That is violent. You cannot say that. Like that, for a Kshatriya, right? He has to discharge his duty to protect the weak, to protect dharma. He has to engage in warfare. For that, he has to be trained. For the training purposes, they go into the forest and kill animals. When they kill animal, right, the animal actually is given your final rights, royal rights, so that, it gets elevated to the status of a human being in next life. Similarly, a Brahmana, when he engages in fire sacrifice, right, whatever the animals are offered in sacrifice, those animals immediately get a human body of life, right? Now, we might ask the question, what is this? We have to understand these were all applicable in the previous yuga. In the current yuga, animal sacrifice is not allowed. It is prohibited in Kali Yuga. But people were not doing it. They were actually, in the name of Vedas, they were sacrificing animals for their own sense gratification. To stop this animal sacrifice, Buddha appeared. Buddha, he is an incarnation, right? If you read Bhagavatam, the first canto, third chapter, the list of incarnations described. There are 22 different incarnations are described. It is not actually just 22. 22 of them are mentioned, but after mentioning the 22, it says that the Lord's incarnations are unlimited. Right? There are many, but some of them are described here. That's what it says. So Buddha is also described as an incarnation. Buddha came for the purpose of stopping this animal sacrifice. People on the name of Vedas, they were engaged in animal sacrifice. So to stop that, Buddha appeared and he said, don't kill animals. Develop compassion for others. When people said, no, we are following the Vedas, Buddha rejected the Vedas. Right? He did not come to create a new religion. His followers created a religion. Right? They created a religion based on ahimsa paro dharma. Ahimsa is never a paro dharma. Ahimsa is a upadharma. It is one of the auxiliary principles. But in this age of Kali, animal sacrifice is never allowed. So to stop that, Buddha appeared. So later his followers created that religion, Buddhism. Right? So here further in the next paragraph, Prabhupada also talks about there are two types of dharma, two types of swadharma, right? Swadharma, right, means duty of the self. There are two types of duty of the self. One is duty of the body. When the soul is embodied, right, when the soul is in this material world, when it's not liberated, his duty is based on his body. Type of body and type of consciousness he has. Based on that, whether it's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya or Shudra, or a Brahmachari, Grahastha, Vanaprastha or Sannyasi, based on that there is a prescribed duty. For a person who is liberated, person who does not get identified himself with the body, right? That is duty of the soul. Duty of the soul is to simply serve the Supreme. Right? When somebody is not liberated, when they are in this material world, they have to engage in their prescribed duty according to Varna and Ashrama. Right? So that is must. So that is why here, right, that Swadharma, based on one's duty, based on one's Varna and Ashrama, that is based on Varnashrama principle. Right? So the Prabhupada says human civilization begins from the stage of Varna and Ashrama. If one does not follow this Varna and Ashrama, is actually human life is not even begun. Right? still they engaged in unregulated life only. Right? So this Varna Ashrama system is a gradual path for a person to get purified gradually and come to the platform of jnana, so that he can understand who he is. I am a spirit soul. I belong to spiritual world. I'm part and parcel of the Supreme. Purpose of the part is to serve the whole. Right? To come to that level, he requires certain amount of purification. Until the heart is purified, he cannot understand the higher knowledge. So the prescribed duty, Varna and Ashrama, is for the purification of the heart. Right? So that is what mentions, right? By following the higher authorities, right? When somebody engages in the prescribed duty based on Varna and Ashrama, he can get gradually elevated to higher status of life. Next verse. Yadrachya kopa pannam swargadvaram apavritam sukhina kshatriya partha labante yuddham idrasham. Yadrachya, by its own accord, cha also upapannam, arrived at Swarga of the heavenly planets, Dwaram, door, Apavritam, wide open, Sukhinaha, very happy, Kshatriyaha, the members of the royal order, Partha, O son of Pritha, Labante, do achieve, Yuddham, war, Idrasham, like this. Translation. O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors of the heavenly planets. Purport. As the supreme teacher of the world, Lord Krishna condemns the attitude of Arjuna, who said, I do not find any good in this fighting. It will cause perpetual habitation in hell. Such statements by Arjuna were due to ignorance only. He wanted to become non-violent in the discharge of his specific duty. For a Kshatriya to be on the battlefield and to become non-violent is the philosophy of the fools. In Parashara Smriti, a religious quote made by Parashara, the great sage and the father of Vyasadeva, it is stated, Kshatriyo hi prajarakshan, Shastra pani pradandayan, Nirjitya para sainyadi, Shitim dharmena palayet. Kshatriya's duty is to protect the citizens from all kinds of difficulties, and for the reason he has to apply violence in suitable cases for law and order. Therefore, he has to conquer the soldiers of inimical kings, and thus, with religious principles, he should rule over the world. Considering all aspects, Arjuna had no reason to refrain from fighting. If he should conquer his enemies, he would enjoy the kingdom. If he should die in the battle, he would be elevated to the heavenly planets, whose doors were wide open to him. Fighting would be for his benefit in either case. Right? So this is very clearly described here. The Kshatriya's duty is to protect Dharma. He has to stand up and fight for Dharma. Arjuna's duty is to stand up. Even on the principle of Karma Kanda, based on Varnashrama, he has to stand up and fight. Next verse. Ata chetvam imam dharmyam shangramam na karyashi tatashva dharmam kirtim cha hitva papam avapsyasi. If, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. So purport, Arjuna was a famous fighter and he attained fame by fighting many great demigods, including even Lord Shiva. After fighting and defeating Lord Shiva in the dress of a hunter, Arjuna pleased the Lord and received a reward, a weapon called Pashupada Astra. Right? Everyone knew that he was a great warrior. Even Dronacharya gave him benedictions and awarded him this special weapon by which he could kill even his teacher. So he was credited with so many military certificates from many authorities, including his adoptive father Indra, the heavenly king. But if he abandoned the battle, not only would he neglect his specific duty as a Kshatriya, but he would lose all his fame and good name, and thus prepare his royal road to hell. In other words, he would go to hell not by fighting, but by withdrawing from the battle. So Arjuna earlier gave the argument in the previous chapter. One of the four arguments is that by fighting this war, right, by killing his ancestors, he might be condemned in hell for several life. The fear of sinful reaction. That's one of the reasons he gave for not fighting. Here, Krishna's response to that is, here, by not doing your duty as a Kshatriya, you will be going to hell. Not for fighting. You will not go to hell by fighting in this war. You will go to hell by not fighting in this war. Because as a Kshatriya, its duty is to stand up and fight and protect Dharma. Right? Here Prabhupada in the purport mentions that Arjuna is a great fighter. He fought even, right, Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva came in the form of a hunter to test, right, Arjuna. And Arjuna fought with him valiantly. And then Lord Shiva was pleased with him and he gave the Pashupadastra. He got blessings from everybody, right? He got blessings from Brahma, the Indra. He got blessings from his own guru, Duryodhana, the Dronacharya. Dronacharya is actually living, fighting for the other side. Even though he is fighting for the other side, actually he gives the blessings to Arjuna only. And he taught all the known weapons, right? All the astras he taught to Arjuna. Even the one he did not teach to his son, Ashwatthama, he taught to Arjuna because Arjuna was a qualified warrior. Right? He is famous all over the world. So here, Arjuna's stakes are very high. By not fighting in this war, right, he will lose his reputation as a fighter. So that's what Krishna is telling. Next verse, 34. Akirtim chapi bhutani kadayishyanti te vyayam sambhavitasya chakritir maranat atirichyate. People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectful person, dishonor is worse than death. Purport: both as a friend and philosopher to Arjuna, Lord Krishna now gives his final judgment regarding Arjuna's refusal to fight. The Lord says, Arjuna, if you leave the battlefield before the battle even begins, people will call you a coward. And if you think that people may call you bad names, but that you will save your life by fleeing the battlefield, then my advice is that you would do better to die in the battle. For a respectful man like you, ill fame is worse than death. So, you should not flee for fear of your life. Better to die in the battle. That will save you from that will save you from the ill fame of misusing my friendship and from losing your prestige in society. So here, right, the purport is very clear. Arjuna, Krishna is telling that, right, if you do not fight this war, if you just run away from this battle, right, people will always speak, right, of bad of you. They will call you as a coward. For a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death, right? So, Arjuna, you are born in a great Kshatriya Kula, both your father side and mother side. In fact, you have my friendship. If you do not fight this war and run away from this battlefield, right? So you will be losing the prestige in the society, as well as, you will be misusing my friendship. So that's what purport Prabhupada writes. So the final judgment of the Lord was for Arjuna to die in the battlefield and not to withdraw. So next verse, verse 35. Bayadranat uparatam mamsyante tvam maharataha yesham cha tvam bahumato bhutva yashashi lagavam. Translation. Sorry, I will read the word by word meaning. Sorry, previous two verses I forgot. Bayat, out of fear, Ranat, from the battlefield, Uparatam, chased, Mamshyante, they will consider Tvam, you, Maharataha, the great generals, Yesham, for whom, Cha, also Tvam, you, Bhagumataha, in great estimation, Bhutva, having been, Yasyashi, you will go, Lagavam, decreased in value. Translation. The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant. Purport. Lord Krishna continued to give his verdict to Arjuna. Do not think that great generals like Duryodhana, Karna, and other contemporaries will think that you have left the battlefield out of compassion for your brothers and grandfather. They will think that you have left out of fear for your life. And thus, their high estimation of your personality will go to hell. Here, right? Arjuna is trying to say that out of compassion, I should not fight this war and I should leave. But Krishna is telling, no, people are not going to think that you ran away from this battle out of compassion. People will, call you ill names and tell you that you are a coward, you ran away from the battlefield out of fear. Especially Duryodhana and this party, Duryodhana and Karna especially, they will call you that you are a coward. So, and your fame will go to hell. So that is the verdict here. Verse 36. Avachivadam cha bahun vadishyandi tava hitaha nindantastava samartyam tado dukkha taram nukim. Avachya, unkind, vadan, fabricated words, cha, also bahun, many, vadishyanti, will say, tava, your, ahitaha, enemies, nindantaha, while vilifying, tava, your, samartyam, ability, tataha, than that, dukkataram, more painful, no, of course, kim, what is there. Translation. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? See, Arjuna's situation, predicament here, right? That if I fight this war, I have to kill my grandfather, my guru, my teachers, my cousins, my nephews, uncles, so many of them. If you do not fight, people will call me with hill names. So Krishna is telling, in this situation, it is better to stand up and fight than running away like a coward. Even out of compassion, you leave this battlefield. Nobody is going to be kind to you. Nobody is going to tell you that, oh, Arjuna left out of compassion. They will call that you are a coward, that's why you left. For a Kshatriya, right, the predominant quality is chivalry, standing up and fighting in the war. His predominant quality is not compassion, especially when he has to discharge a duty. Right? So he should not be shying away from discharging his duty. So that is the verdict here. Purport. Lord Krishna was astonished in the beginning at Arjuna's uncalled for plea for compassion, and he described his compassion as befitting the non-Aryans. Now, in so many words, he has proved his statements against Arjuna's so-called compassion. So this is all, Krishna's response to Arjuna's argument in the previous chapter. 4 reasons he gave to not to fight in the war: compassion, fear of sinful reaction, right? Loss of enjoyment, and then destruction of family traditions. All 4 of them, Krishna is going to dismantle. All the arguments he had given earlier, Arjuna, Krishna is going to defeat those arguments based on scriptures only. Now, in this past few verses, right, by giving Atma Jnana, by quoting the Varnashrama duty, he had defeated the compassion part and the loss of enjoyment part, as well as suffering in hell part. Next verse. Hatavo प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गं जीत्वा वो भोक्ष्यसे महीम् तस्मात् उत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय युद्धाय कृत निश्चयः. Hatah, being killed, va either prapsyasi, you gain swargam, the heavenly kingdom, jitva, by jitva, by conquering, va, or bhoksyase, you enjoy mahim, the world, tasmat, therefore uttishta, get up. Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Yuddhaya, to fight, Krita, determined, Nischaya, in certainty. Translation, O son of Kunti. Either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdoms. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. Purport. Even though there was no certainty of victory for Arjuna's side, he still had to fight. For even being killed there, he would be elevated into heavenly planets. See, in the war, there is no certainty, right? War can go this way or that way. In fact, Arjuna's side, it's only 7 Akshoni of army, whereas Duryodhana's side, there are 11 Akshoni. In fact, Duryodhana's side, Maharathis like Bhishma, Dronacharya, right? All the great warriors are there, including Karna, Ashwatthama. So many of them are there. So, if we just go by material estimation, there is very likely that 7 is to 11, right? Obviously, 11 is going to win, right? So, from the material estimation side, the chances that Arjuna's side will lose is higher. But even if that is the case, he cannot run away from the fight, run away from the war, because as a Kshatriya, he has to stand up and fight. If he loses the war and dies in the war, he will go to higher planets. If he wins the war, he will get to rule the kingdom. So that is the final verdict. Next verse. Shukadukke shama kritva same kritva labalabhyo jaya jayau tato uddaya yudvasya naivam papam apsyasi. Shuka, happiness, dukkha and distress, same in equanimity. Kritva, doing so. Labha, alabhau, both profit and loss. Jaya, ajayau, both victory and defeat. Tatraha, thereafter, yuddhaya, for the sake of fighting. Yujyashva, engage. Na, never. Evam, in this way. Papam, sinful reaction, avapsyasi, you will gain. Translation. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. Purport. Lord Krishna now directly says that Arjuna should fight for the sake of fighting because he desires the battle. There is no consideration of happiness or distress, profit or loss, victory or defeat in the activities of Krishna consciousness. That everything should be performed for the sake of Krishna in transcendental consciousness. So there is no reaction to material activities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone. As one one is in the ordinary course of activities, it is said, Devarshi Bhutapya Niranam Pitranam Na Kinkaro Nayam Trinecha Rajan Sarvatmanaya Sharanam Sharanyam Gato Mukundam Parihiratya Kartam. Anyone who has completely surrendered unto Krishna, Mukunda, giving up all other duties, is no longer a debtor, nor is he obliged to anyone, not the demigods, nor the sages, nor the people in general, nor kinsmen, nor humanity, nor forefathers. So this is a quote from Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 5th chapter, 41st verse. That is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse. And the matter will be more clearly explained in the following verses. Right? Here in this verse, Krishna is telling, right? Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. In the previous verses, Krishna is telling you should fight as a Kshatriya. The duty is to protect the Dharma. You have to stand up and fight for Dharma. Hence you should do. If you do not, you will incur sin, you will go to hell for that. Here further he is giving a hint, Krishna. Right? If we simply fight for the sake of fighting. What do you mean by for the sake of fighting? It is not just for the random sake of fighting. Actually, it's Krishna's will. The whole battle is happening because of Krishna's will. Krishna had descended into this material world to annihilate the miscreants and to establish the religious principle. Right? On the request of Mother Earth, Krishna had descended in this world to annihilate the miscreants. So this war is a means through which Krishna can fulfill, right, the request given by Mother Earth to him. The promise he had given to Devatas and to Mother Earth that he will descend in this world and he will take care of the situation. The best way of doing is assembling all this so-called Kshatriyas or people who are in the name of religion, who are engaged in adharmic activity. Krishna's arrangement, Krishna's plan is to assemble all of them in this one battlefield and then do this mass cleanup. So Krishna is giving hint to Arjuna, just simply do this fight in this for sake of fighting without worrying about happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. Because I have decided this war. If you do in that way, you will get my mercy. That is what Prabhupada is actually explaining in the purport. For a person in Krishna consciousness, right, his own personal liking and disliking doesn't matter. He simply do what Krishna asked him to do. Right? Because for such a person, there is no duty. From Srimad Bhagavatam, Prabhupada is quoting. A person who is surrendered to Krishna, who is engaged in service of Krishna, he is not obligated. Normally, in general, sorry, I lost power here. I have this battery for the internet. So I think we will go on for a few minutes. So I think that's all right, I think. Let me get my phone so that I get down the light. So here Prabhupada is quoting from Srimad Bhagavatam, a person who surrendered to Krishna, right? He does not have any obligation in this world, right? Normally a person is obligated to who and all, is obligated to his parents or his kith and kin, right? And then he is obligated to society, is obligated to devatas, is obligated to the sages, is obligated to people in general, right? He is obligated to his forefathers. All these obligations are there. That is why one has to engage in all these various type of yajna to fulfill the obligation for all these different people in the society. But a person who is direct surrendered to Krishna, right? He is not obligated to anyone. He is free because he is liberated already, because he is already surrendered. So that is the indirect hint given by Krishna to Arjuna in this verse. Because Arjuna is actually surrendered to Krishna. He is already surrendered. Again in Bhagavad-gita, now in the second chapter beginning, we saw that he is surrendering. So hence, he is not obligated to anyone. If he simply fights for the pleasure of Krishna, everything will be auspicious and he will not be affected by this papa and punya of this world. So that is the, conclusion of this section. Even on the basis of karma kanda, on the basis of varna and ashrama, Arjuna's duty is to stand up and fight for protecting dharma. Hence, he cannot consider running away from this war, right? In fact, by not fighting in this war, he will incur sin. The final conclusion is here that if he fights simply for the sake of fighting, without gain or loss, happiness or distress, right? Victory or loss, if simply fights for the pleasure of Krishna, everything will become auspicious. That is the instruction here. So next section will continue in this theme of performing this duty, right? Buddhi yoga, doing everything for the pleasure of Krishna. Specifically the Nishkama Karma Yoga, right? So that is what we will see next week, 2.39 to 53. If we are not able to cover the entire section, we will at least cover, maybe like few verses. We will try to cover as much as we can next week. At this time, any comments, any questions?
Yeah, may I ask a question? I have two, but I'll start with one.
Sure.
Okay. So the first one is, just like in 31st shloka in a purport, said that animal sacrifice, Buddha disagreed with what is in Veda and prohibited it. Similarly, in the next verse, when in a purport you talked about varnashram and duties of 4 varnas. In today's society in Kali Yuga, we transcend those. It is not based on what you are born in, but your capabilities. So how do you reconcile those?
It's a very good question, Prashant ji. So there are two things, Varna and Jati. Varna is always not based on birth. Varna is always based on one's quality and work he does. Jati is based on the family in which he is born. That is Jati. One does not automatically become a Brahmana by taking birth in a Brahmanical family. One becomes a Brahmana by his quality and work. So in Kali Yuga, in this current age, right? As you said, doesn't matter which family you are born, based on your qualification, you do the work. That is always true, even in the previous life, in the previous ages, even the previous Yuga, it was like that only. It is a misunderstanding. If you born in a carpenter's family, you become a carpenter. You are born in a blacksmith family, you become a blacksmith. You born in a Vaidya's family, you become a Vaidya. That stamping is not there anywhere in the entire Vedic system. You, right, as a person, when you study under a bona fide guru, he will help you to discover your varna and ashrama. So there is a huge difference between varna ashrama and jati, caste system. The Britishers created this caste system because the Hindu society, they had this varna and ashrama system. The Britishers misunderstood, and they need a way to classify people for purpose of managing. They created this jati system, which is based on birth, which is never true. Especially in the next chapter, in the 4th chapter, Krishna will talk about this varnashrama more. Krishna will tell, Chatur Varna Maya Shrishtam Guna Karma Vibhagasha. This 4 varna, right, is created based on guna and karma, not based on janma and karma. But over the period of time, people had misused the system. It has become based on janma karma instead of guna karma. So varnashrama system is there anywhere you go in the society, anywhere you go in the civilized society. You will naturally will see people falling into this 4 class. The teachers, the administrators, the business people, and the labor class, worker class. Naturally, people will fall into this 4 category. This is natural. That is what Varna Ashrama system is. Does that make sense, Prashantji?
Yes, it does.
So, the Varna Ashrama system, originally what is described, we will talk about it more later in the 4th chapter. Varna Ashrama system is based on quality and the work one performs, not based on birth at all.
So, Swamiji, are you saying there is never a caste system?
Thus, organizing the society based on one's quality and work was always there. That is natural. Anywhere in the world, you will see this naturally. That is Varna Ashrama. We call it as Varna Ashrama. But the Jati system was the perverted reflection of the original thing, which existed properly. In Kali Yuga, people misused this facility. Oh, if you are born in a Brahmana, you are born in a Brahmana family, you automatically become a Brahmana. You are born in a Kshatriya family, you are automatically Kshatriya. Like that, they misused this based on Jati. Based on birth. Does that make sense, Ji?
It does make sense, but that is not what we see. Even today, anybody can't be a Brahmin. I mean, anybody. It comes from where they were born. I mean, that's how we see them, at least.
No, that's what I'm saying. In Kali Yuga, the whole thing is misused. It is not based on Janma and Karma. It is based on Guna and Karma. One's quality and work determines one's Varna. Nowhere in the Vedic scripture, by birth, one becomes a Brahmana or Kshatriya or Vaishya or Shudra.
No, Swamiji, I have a beg to differ in this case because even in Mahabharata period, the kings are come by only by succession, by birth, not by knowledge or anything. So
no, that is not. That is the whole point of Madhava.
No. We can see that why all these things, because in the scheme,
even if you're born in a king family, if you're not qualified to rule, you will not be allowed to rule. That's the case in Dhritarashtra. Even though he is born, he is the eldest son, He didn't have the right to rule the kingdom because he is not qualified by birth. He is blind. He is not qualified to rule.
No, that is a disability. That is a disability, but not with the knowledge.
That disability is not just based on body. That's based on his quality also. He will be trained properly. If a son born in a Kshatriya family, he will be sent to proper training. And if he exhibits all the quality, then only he will become a king. Otherwise, he will not. That is the tradition. But in Kali Yuga, everything started going down. By the way, there were not ashrama system. People started misusing. You study carefully Mahabharata. You study Srimad Bhagavatam. You study all the Vedic literature. You will see, in general, right? If there are 4 sons are there, the eldest son will get the right to rule the kingdom. But if he is not qualified, one of the disqualification is this disability. That is not the only reason. If somebody is not properly educated, if his qualities are not to protect the weaker, then he will not be allowed to become a king. In fact, if you read Bhagavatam, right, there was a person, right, what's his name, King Vena, right, Vena was there. His father was a great king, but his son, somehow or the other, he became a, unrighteous person. But somehow he took over the kingdom. He was ruling adharmically. Now what happens? Now the Brahmanas, they see the situation and they have to correct. And they chant mantra and they kill the king.
And why is Karna was disqualified throughout? Just because he was Shudra, right? Even though he was very well qualified as
so the qualification is not just based on a particular skill. Arjuna and Karna, if you look at both of them, there is a huge controversy nowadays. People think that Karna was unjustly punished and he was not given chance at all of them. That is not true at all. Karna, if you understand who he is, in the previous life he was, right, a demon called Shakachara Kavach. By the way, my power is going to go off now. We will continue on this. Remind me of this Karna topic. I will give you more purport about Karna. Karna was never disqualified just simply because of the birth, because he also exhibited the qualities of not actually proper Kshatriya. So if you read carefully, the mainstream society has go through what they know is not from Mahabharata, the actual what is Vedavyas written by whatever the movie makers and television makers they show. That's what we think it is Mahabharata. If you read Mahabharata carefully, what is Vyasadeva presented, all this misconception will go away. Vedavyas presented Mahabharata in a neutral way as it happened. Right? In fact, Arjuna, Krishna actually tells to Duryodhana, to Karna, that hey, your birth is a secret nobody knows. Right? Only 2 people know. Only Kunti and myself. He reveals to Arjuna, Duryodhana, to Karna, actually you are the eldest son of Kunti. You are the elder of the Pandavas. You take the side of Pandavas to protect Dharma. But because of his attachment to Duryodhana, he doesn't want to. Anyway, the reason we'll know when you understand the previous life of Karna, who he is and why it is happening, we will understand properly, like that. So always, whatever when we see in the scripture, when you see a contradiction, it is not a contradiction. That is actually because we do not understand the full thing involved. that is why it looks like a contradiction. But if you read carefully Mahabharata and the ancillary scriptures, everything properly will reconcile. You know? So that we will talk next week. Please remind me, Ji, about Karna. I will talk about Karna, and so this various so-called conflicts within Mahabharata. If you study carefully with proper guidance, there is actually no conflict. In fact, there is a nice seminar called Resolving Conflicts in Mahabharata. I will send you the link for it's like a almost 10-session seminar. So I can give you that also, link to those videos I have in YouTube. But in summary, next week we'll talk a little bit more about Karna. This Varnashrama system is actually it's natural. Anywhere you go in any society, whether they follow Vedas or not, naturally people will fall into these 4 categories. This is a natural classification of human beings based on their ability. In fact, if you read Vedas, right, I'll bring that story of that boy who wanted to learn Veda, and he approaches the sage, and then actually the sage will ask him, what's your kula, meaning like what's your lineage. He says, he goes and asks the mother. Mother says, I don't know. And in fact, when he goes and tells the sage that I don't know which kula I was born, then immediately that king, that sage will tell, because you told the truth, you are considered, because you exhibited the Brahmanical quality, you are qualified to study, I will teach you the Veda. Like that. So this is Vedic tradition. But there is one information, that if somebody is born in a Brahmanical family, there is a higher chance that he might develop Brahmanical qualities by the environment. But that is not guaranteed. Based on what he did in his previous life, his propensities might be going in different direction. We see all the time. So hence birth cannot be a determination factor at all, once Varna and Ashrama. Okay?
Okay, Swamiji.
So we will talk more about this. This is a very interesting topic, because if you carefully study the scriptures, there is no conflict at all. It is all coming because of lack of knowledge and because of misinformation, especially what the Britishers did to us. Because they don't have any way of ascertaining who is a Brahmana, who is a Kshatriya, who is a Vaishya. They simply way of, if you are born in a carpenter's family, you might be a carpenter. This is the easy way of doing, like, for them survey and managing their society. That's what they did. It was never like that before. But the chances are higher that you might get trained by your father to develop a quality of a carpenter if you are born in a carpenter family. But that is not a compulsion at all. In fact, if you read the Vedic stories, sometimes so many sons born of a king, they never exhibited the Kshatriya quality, and sometimes they become sages, they become Brahmanas because they exhibited those qualities. But in Kali Yuga, Kalavu Shudra Shambhava. Right? Everything is mixed up. Everybody is actually Shudra or lower only in Kali Yuga. There is a nice shloka, Janmane Jayata Shudraha. By birth, everybody is a Shudra. Samskarit Bhavad Vijaga. By performance of various samskaras, purificatory ceremonies, one becomes twice born. And then Veda Pavet Vipraha. By studying of Vedas, by becoming proficient in Vedas, one becomes Vipra. And Brahma Janati iti Brahmana. By inquiring about Brahman, one becomes a Brahmana. So like that, But we can see in Kali Yuga, everything is degraded. People misuse the system, Okay, so we'll stop here. I know it's 6:45. So we'll
Swamiji,
continue.
can you please send those 4 lines in the WhatsApp, what you said just now?
Yes, definitely. Janmane Jayata Shudraha, right?
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Janmana Jayate Shudraha, Samskaret Bhava Dvijaha, right? Veda Bhavit Vipraha, and then Janma Jana, Brahma Janati iti Brahmanaha. I will send you the sloka. I'll send you the reference in translation as well. So,
Thank you.
yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant. Thank you.